Hi, this is Patrick with Trusty Huckster Mercantile. If you've been to my channel before, welcome back. Glad to hear I didn't chase you away. If this is your first time, then welcome to Trusty Huckster Mercantile. Again, my name is Patrick. I'm a vintage reseller focusing on glass, porcelain, pottery, basically any vintage objects of interest, which I sell on my Etsy store under the handle TH Mercantile for Trusty Huckster Mercantile. I've been doing this for about going on 7 months, going into my 8th month now. So still relatively new, learning as I go along, and doing a little bit of a mix of different videos. If you've looked at my channel, you might see some haul videos that I've done. Maybe you've seen the Show Off Your Bunker Challenge, which George from the Antique Nomad had issued toward the beginning of the quarantines for COVID-19. But I have not done a what's sold video in a while. To be honest, I wasn't 100% sure what I was offering was valid, but based on everything that's been going on with the stay-at-home orders and the national lockdowns, and the fact that I did have my biggest month in sales for the 7 months that I've been doing online sales, I thought it actually might be worthwhile to go ahead and showcase a little bit of what I've done and just kind of summarize how I'm working with Etsy, how Etsy's working with me, and talking maybe a little bit about the state of resale in this specific area. So first we're going to start with the numbers. So for the basics, as I mentioned, April 2020 was the largest number of sales that I have had since I started with Etsy. Again, that's only 7 months worth of data, so we're not exactly doing a huge sample size, but it's something that in my little world, it is a meaningful number that this is the most sales that I've had. I finished April with 41 sales. And according to the metrics from within Etsy, my sales totaled $909. So of that $909 in sales, a good chunk of that went into the shipping costs. I use Pirate Ship, which is a separate program that does very nicely link with Etsy, so it makes the shipping aspect very, very good. According to my Pirate Ship program, I had $337 worth of shipping costs. In doing any sort of analysis for Etsy sales, you always have to consider fees. Etsy, eBay, Mercari, no matter what the platform is, it would not exist without its fees. According to the data tracked within my Etsy app, my total fees for the month of April were $144. So if you take my gross sales of $909 and then subtract the shipping costs and subtract the fees, you're left with a net profit at that point of $428. But once again, there's one more line item that needs to be subtracted out of there. But for this video, I've not gone through and done my specifics and actually calculated my individual item cost of goods. But that is the money that I've spent to actually acquire all of these items. But doing a general summary for the 41 items that went out the door, my all-in total for anything that I paid for purchasing them, if I purchased and had them shipped to me, all of that in, is well under $100. So I pretty much netted $328 for the month. So I'm not knocking anybody's socks off. There are some resellers that have made that much money just in the time it's going to take me to complete this sentence. I am not playing in that world. I'm not at that caliber. This is a side hustle for me. I enjoy it greatly. I only sell the items that I enjoy selling. If that means that I'm somewhat restricted, so be it. It's a side business that I'm just enjoying, having fun building it up and putting nice items into new people's hands. With all of that said, one of the things that I've been noticing during the shutdown is that a lot of people are really hypothesizing what the resale market looks like, what the vintage market is going to look like, what life will look like as things start to open themselves back up. Now, some states have started to do that. I'm in Illinois, and we are still in a stay-at-home order through the end of May. But you hear all the different stories, and even within Illinois, some things are softening up. But one of the trends that I kept hearing was that what was successfully being sold and purchased online during the heart and during the time of this pandemic were items that people wanted to use while they were home. They were purchasing them now because they didn't have them. Puzzles, games, materials to be able to educate your children because suddenly you were doing homeschooling, a lot of that material, which things I do not sell. So initially in March, I will say that March was actually my second worst month of the 7 that I've been doing, second only to the first month where I wasn't even selling for a full month. I didn't even go live until partway through October. So I did have a little bit of a concern that maybe people weren't going to be buying glass and pottery and porcelain just because it looked nice, because they were going to be focused on other things. And that may still hold true. But I did want to do this What Sold video really to showcase the fact that there's a market for just about anything. Just recently, I think actually today, Jeffrey from Real Nifty Vintage kind of had a philosophical commentary on that. When people talk about there's no market, in many cases, they're looking at reselling as a numbers and as a money business. And for a lot of people, this is their full income and that's the way they need to. And there's nothing wrong with that. But finding a market for something may mean I'm selling it for $10 profit. I don't have a problem with that. But for someone who needs to really crank through a lot of business or crank through a lot of packages, dealing with packaging things up and maybe is shipping out 100 packages a day, something that only makes a profit of $10 might not be as attractive. So the general statement gets made, there's no market for that. So what I'm going to show is just what I found with my little market. I've excitedly, within April, I actually started having some repeat customers, something that I really did not have the first 6 months. And I'm getting some really positive feedback because I take very seriously how I service my customer and provide them as much information and communication as I can, even before they're placing the order, while they're placing the order, and then once it is shipped. So let's crunch into the numbers. I'm not going to go into everything piece by piece because I don't want this video to be super long. So I'm just going to showcase a couple categories of what I've sold and highlight some of the items that I took a personal interest in selling, or maybe I learned a lesson in selling it that I can utilize going forward as I continue to sell other items like it. So the first category we're going to cover is glass. And just this week, there was a discussion in a group of resellers that was doing a live chat on YouTube that glass is dead. That nobody wants glass, there's no market for glass, no one should carry glass because no one's going to buy glass. Again, you take the comment that I made earlier, there's always a market for everything, and I think Jeffrey should make a t-shirt or a tote bag that says that, because it's something that I think everyone should keep in mind. Whether you're a buyer or a reseller, you should not be ostracized because you're buying something that a lot of people don't care for. And you shouldn't have an issue if you're selling something that only has a small margin to it, that has a small clientele. If you're doing it for the right reasons and it's successful to you, then who cares what anyone else thinks? So glass is one of my passions. I've had a glass collection most of my adult life. I continue to build it. I continue to improve its quality. Actually, one of the pieces that I sold this month was from my own collection that I outgrew it and wanted to make sure it went to another home, and it did. So that's this little purple ball vase. No maker to it. It was blown. There's a ponto mark on the bottom, but it was blown into a mold, and it had a fairly serious seam to it. So even when I purchased it, I didn't feel that it was particularly high quality. I don't even remember when I got it. It was probably sometime in the 90s or the 2000s. That was the time that I was really focused on building that collection. It most likely came from an antique store. I hadn't really discovered thrift stores per se. I had not been into a Goodwill until I started doing theater and discovered that it was a great place for costumes and for props. So back in those days, I'm sure this came from some little gift shop. I don't think it was a Target or anything. I do think it was something a little bit different than that. But I'm sure I did not spend a lot of money on it because, again, it wasn't a high quality piece, but I had a specific section on the bookcase. I had a specific color that I wanted to add to it. Purple happens to be my favorite color, and it worked. As I moved things around and moved into my new place, it didn't work as much, so it went to a new home. So that was one of the pieces that technically I did have a cost to it, but I can't really put that into the numbers game of what my profit margin is because I have no proof of what I paid for it 25 years ago. So that is an item that went, and it was actually shipped to California, along with another item that I find it interesting. Both pieces individually were not sold with included shipping, but they did exactly what I have done. They found two pieces that they liked, added them together to hit the $35 so that they got the free shipping for both pieces. I was happy to provide it because both pieces packaged together was not particularly heavy, so it didn't cost a lot even shipping it to California, and I still made a really nice profit to cover the other piece, the Kontiki bowl with the ball on top that I did purchase from a Goodwill. That was $2, as well as the other piece. I made my profit and I'm perfectly happy. But the other piece I wanted to highlight was my favorite piece that I sold. It was one that showcases what I like about doing the Etsy reselling. I was able to do some research, and through the assistance of complete strangers that I found through Facebook, I was able to get the very specifics of what this piece was. It is a yellow cut to clear sweet meat tall foot compote. That's what came back to me. That is how I promoted it. The yellow is only on the top. It was a flashed yellow, or as I understand it, it was flashed yellow and then cut through so that the clear was still underneath. So it was not clear. It was not a yellow glass. It was a yellow finish to the glass. So when you cut through it, you got the clear accents, and it had this lattice work design. It had the arrows. I just found it was a stunning piece. But admittedly, when I picked it up, I thought it was something maybe from the 50s. This to me looked like almost going to what would have become the Mad Men, appeal of the 60s. I thought this was a transitional piece, and it turns out it was transitional, but it was transitional from the 20s. So it was a Westmoreland Compote, and the detail that I got through one of the identification sites on Facebook instantaneously gave me all of the information I needed. It had pattern numbers, it had page numbers of where it appeared in catalogs. So I was really excited to be able to sell this piece. I'm sure it went to a good home, and I packaged it insanely well because I did not want that stem to break. And it made it, and I'm sure it looks great with the person that had purchased it. Quite a bit into my Etsy store are vintage kitchen and dinnerware items. And this was a very good month for a lot of individual specialty items and specialty patterns in some random combinations that just, again, goes to prove there's a market for just about anything. And you just have to be able to put the information out there and trust that the right people will be doing the right types of searches, and they'll be able to find what you have to offer. One of the more interesting pieces that I was able to sell was this mismatch of 4 individual plates from Metlox Potteries of California. It's of the provincial pattern, which has the large rooster in the design. I picked these up actually as a purchase of a larger dinner set, which was technically the homestead pattern, but the homestead has pieces that have the same type of trim, so a lot of the pieces jump between the two. And so I went back and forth with the buyer of these 4 plates to say, well, I do have additional pieces if you are interested, and provided information, some that I had already published onto Etsy, but actually a couple that I had not, simply because I'd already posted a lot up. I was looking to see if they'd get some traction. Went back and forth. She didn't end up purchasing any additional pieces, but she was thrilled to have the pieces that she was acquiring, and told me that if I ever come across more pieces, then to let her know, and she would definitely pick those up. Another piece was, again, a specialty edition, technically part of a larger dinnerware service that I picked up. This individual only wanted the butter dish. And what I found interesting about this one was I got the question initially, before she purchased it, I received the question, can you tell me, does a stick of butter fit under it? And I found that as a very odd question, but evidently vintage butter sticks evidently were smaller. Somehow they were made slightly differently, and this person seemed to feel that there was a need to know whether a modern stick of butter would fit underneath it. And out of absolute sheer coincidence, I had a stick of butter in the fridge. I'm not sure why it was there. I have a feeling my daughter had something to do with it. But regardless, I had one, so I took some pictures of it, showed a little video of showing how the lid closed onto the bottom plate so it made the noise so you could actually tell it was sitting down nicely. She ended up making the purchase. And then I had made a mistake. It was an item that I had posted without shipping included and said it was available. If you purchase a $35, you'd get it for free. Otherwise, it had a calculation. And when she came back and purchased it, I noticed that the pricing for the shipping seemed extremely high. And when I went back and I looked, the weight I had put in there was double what the actual package cost. So I am not going to play that game. I'm not taking advantage of that. So I contacted her and I said, hey, FYI, I made a mistake. I'm happy to refund you. I think it ended up being like $3. I said, I'm happy to refund that. However, depending on why you're picking this up, I have some other pieces that go to this set. If you're interested in the salt and pepper, I can throw them into the same box and I will give those to you technically for free. But technically, well, I'll give those to you. They won't technically be free, but you've already paid for the freight. Instead of me refunding you the $3, I will give you the salt and pepper shakers for $3. Now, I had already done the testing to make sure the size of the box, to make sure all three pieces would actually fit in there and that it wouldn't change the overall weight of the package. Luckily, all the numbers worked out. She was absolutely ecstatic to be able to get two additional pieces for what she felt was free, because she was perfectly happy paying the exorbitant shipping cost that populated on eBay. And I didn't have to send a rebate. I did not have to refund her the overage. And I got rid of another 2 pieces of inventory at a perfectly acceptable price. It was a set of stoneware salt and pepper shakers that if I'd sold them, I probably would have sold them for $5 or $6 plus shipping. So selling them for $3 and making a happy customer, that was worth the couple bucks that I didn't make. Hadley plate that sold. I personally don't see the appeal to these. And so this falls into that category where I'm picking them up when I think they look interesting, but I'm not picking them up as a full product line that I want to carry. And this was a little plate. And for anyone who's seen any of my videos, I am a big fan of the coaster, the small plate. I think it just goes back to my childhood growing up on Norman Rockwell. This whole idea of these small plates, I just really like. And so when I found this little Hadley plate with the flower and a gift for you, it just seemed like a sweet piece to pick up. And again, in my situation, they're ideal for reselling because they fit into a small box. They always weigh under a pound, so I can ship them first class. So when I sell them, I can do it shipping included and not worry about whether it's shipping down the street or if it's shipping across the country. The cost is the same because it's under a pound and it can go first class mail. They're also not expensive enough that if something were to ever happen to them, I would be able to eat the loss of that purchase, refunding the customer's money and just being out, from the loss because it's not insured. So those are all, pluses and minuses, balance, things that you have to balance when you're reselling. For 15 years and I currently sell to libraries, it's somewhat surprising even to myself that I don't do a lot in books. I actually have pretty decent access to them because I call on public libraries all the time, not lately during the shutdowns, but in general. And I slowly have started picking up some books to sell, but again, I have to have some personal interest in them and want to list them on my shop. And I was really excited that this book sold. I picked this up for 10 cents. They were having a sale that day that I visited. Every hardcover in the place was 10 cents. And this thing was pristine. It was never, unlike most library sale books, it was never processed into the library. Somebody must have donated it and the library chose not to acquire it into their system. So there was no labels, there were no stamps. This was not marked in any way. And this is a book that I personally owned in the 90s. I visited the Soviet Union in 1989. My parents got me this book as a gift. It's this great photo representation of, even at the time the book was published, the uncertainty of what was going to actually happen to that era, because the Soviet Union was falling apart right around the same time this book was published. So I don't know if that was the intention of the photographer to capture this before it totally disappeared, but it is absolutely a beautiful photographic collection and literally snapshot of an era. And so this was something, I didn't sell it for a lot of money. I knew I could ship it medium mail. The book was actually pretty heavy. I think once I packaged it up, I think it weighed 6 pounds. So it was a pretty hefty book. But, you know, the medium mail is not particularly expensive. I probably should check. It may not have even arrived yet because medium mail is notoriously slow. But this was a fun item to sell. So that was the only book that I actually sold. But I did also have some that fell into the paper, ephemera, and art categories. This really cute set of coasters that were from a Victoria and Albert Museum exhibition on the arts and crafts movement. I almost kept these for myself, and for a very short period of time, they had come out of the packaging, and the packaging was in the recycling bin because I was keeping them. And then I decided, oh wait, I already had a set of coasters that I'd already stolen out of my resale inventory. So I didn't need another set. So package came back out of recycling and they went online. So these were very inexpensive to ship. This was a very inexpensive purchase, cost me $1. So I was able to resell these and ship them, again, under £1. They went regular first class mail. Made it fairly quickly because those also shipped to California. Made it out there fairly quickly, and she wrote me a very kind review because she loved them. And she actually is one of my repeat customers now. And then the other piece that I made is one of the areas that falls under the lessons learned category, and that is pay attention to your listing. I had picked up a framed piece of a charcoal print that was of a kiwi bird. It was dated on the back, 1968. So I love stuff like that. You know, it really puts it specifically into the era. It had a frame that was also from the 60s that had kind of a matte and a paint on it. But the frame was not in very good shape. The edges of the glass were kind of, flea bit, they were kind of a little rough, kind of hard to handle. The frame itself was metal, and it hadn't rusted, but there was a little bit of oxidation to it, and it just didn't look particularly clean. And the problem was it's a 60s frame, so that puppy had real glass, and it was thick, and it was heavy. And so when I purchased it, my intention was not to sell it with the frame. For some reason, when I took the photographs, all the photographs that I posted online did not have the art in the frame, except for the last one. And the only thing I can think of is typically what I will do is I will take a picture of the item at the very beginning when I start photographing things with its inventory number. And so that's how I can keep track of my record. That's how I do my record keeping, because I'll take all the photographs as a group and then I will go list. I don't take one item and follow it all the way through. So what had happened was I grabbed one of the photographs that I'd had of the actual framed print. It wasn't even a very good photo, but that was included in the listing as the last photograph. There was nothing in the listing that said it was framed, but there was also nothing in the listing that said it was unframed. So this was a repeat customer of mine, and I think she was actually my first repeat customer. The first thing that she'd purchased from me was a set of they're Australian themed coasters, and so she has a theme going. And this had also been picked up during a 20% off sale, which the problem with doing sales on Etsy is it also takes 20% then off of the shipping included price. So suddenly I was taking this big hit on the price, and I still had to ship it, and it now weighed significantly more than I had budgeted it to weigh. So in the end, I probably lost money once you start calculating all the fees. On simple paper for that transaction, I broke even, like almost literally broke even within like a dime. But then once you throw some fees in there, I lost money. But I made the customer happy. She also wrote me another very good review. And because I'm trying to build up my presence on Etsy, I have a good number of reviews right now. I'm actually pretty happy considering how many sales I've had that I have so many 5-star reviews. So in some cases, again, it's a balancing act. It was my fault. I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to contact her and say, oh, hey, by the way, thanks for ordering this. I need you to pay me more because I messed up. I messed up. I fixed it, and now I know to pay more attention. The last several items that I sold fall into, they're really a subcategory of the kitchen and dinnerware, so it should have been included in that section. But I kept this one separate because it's probably the only category I have that I did make more sales in this month than I typically had made historically. And I think I could possibly explain that by people being home more. And that is the sale of coffee mugs. I had only had a handful of them, and they were something that I wasn't really sure on because, again, I'm doing everything with free shipping, and almost in all cases they were heavy enough that they weren't going to be able to go by first class. So suddenly I was dealing with the idea of shipping them longer distances and having them weigh more. A couple of cases they were pairs of mugs, so then you've got the additional weight that you're shipping to. But I ended up selling more this month than I had of all of my other months put together of mugs. And I think it could be the situation that people are now sitting home. They're not driving through the Starbucks. They're not going to Dunkin' Donuts. They're not getting free coffee from their office. They're having to drink their own coffee from home. And either they wanted a nice mug to drink it out of because they wanted to treat themselves, or it was a functional. I don't have enough mugs and I don't want to have to do dishes every 3 days, so I need more mugs. And so the mugs that I sold ranged from super specialty mugs that maybe are being used for daily coffee drinking. That was these Columbia pieces that are pewter based with these ceramic inserts. That actually went in a really big box because I wanted to make sure the ceramic didn't get smashed by the pieces of pewter. So anyways, she got some specialty mugs. 2 Mary Engelbright mugs went out. So those were for a big Mary Engelbright fan. I think she had the word cherry somewhere in her username. So that was a popular one. I had a really cute squirrel mug. That was probably one of my favorites. It was actually in my, you can do a little featured section at the top of your Etsy store. And it was one of the items, even though it was only a $15 item, it was one of the items in the featured store just because I thought he was cute. So these mugs sold, and hopefully they're being used while everyone's still under lockdown. And once doors open back up, they'll remember that I was the person that provided them their cool coffee mug, and they'll consider buying from me for their Christmas gifts. So those are the highlights of what I sold. This video already ran longer than I had intended, but if you've seen any of my videos, that should not be a surprise to you. I am a talker. But anyway, I hope it highlighted a few things of what's selling out there, at least the experiences that I have sold. Today is the first day of May when I'm recording this, and I've already had 2 more sales today. So I'm really excited to see what might be happening as we move forward. But regardless, if you've gotten to this point in my video, if you have not already done so, I would appreciate you giving it a thumbs up. If you've gotten to this point and you've listened to me ramble this far, I'm going to assume that you're a subscriber, but just in case, if you're not, I really would appreciate you signing on to become a subscriber. And check out some of my other videos. I am trying to post a little bit more regularly and mix things up a little bit, because especially right now I can't do really as many haul videos because I don't have places to source right now. But I'm continuing to post new inventory onto my Etsy shop simply because I've fallen so far behind. So take a look at my Etsy store, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook. All of them can be found under this abbreviation TH Mercantile. That's Trusty Huckster Mercantile. And if you've got any comments of anything else you'd like to see, appreciate you putting it down below. And I hope you catch my next video. Thanks a lot for your time. Take care. Bye-bye.